Welcome back, everyone. We're here today with a brand new intermittent fasting based topic. Excited to get into today's show. This is an actual intermittent fasting diet that's been around a long time. Maybe one of the, I would say, more originators of the intermittent fasting diet. It's continuing to be proven out in the research now that intermittent fasting is more popular. There's actually more research dollars going towards it, which I think is fantastic. But it's a topic that I covered in the past. And so I'm not going to go super in depth on how to actually complete it, but I will link up the diet here today. So if you want to go to stevencabral.com/2413, and by the way, it's completely free. So all the podcasts, of course, are always in depth. They're completely free. They're searchable at stevencabral.com/podcasts. But what I'm going to do on today's show is just link up all the pertinent previous podcasts on this one specific method of intermittent fasting that we'll go over in just a second. And you can find that at stevencabral.com/2413. Okay. So one of the reasons why I want to do this, and I talked about this on yesterday's show, which yesterday's show was how to get rid of burping and gas, and there's 9 specific reasons, and so I look at those as 9 specific underlying root causes, and if you get rid of the underlying root cause, then you fix the specific health-based issue, and again, that's why there's always an answer. So I tell people all the time, like, hey, have you ever worked with this? Have you ever worked with this? Can you fix this? The reason is, again, like there's nothing magical. What we do is we find the underlying root cause, we rebalance that, and then the symptom, which people label as the disease, can no longer exist. Well, intermittent fasting is such a big part of our work, and that's because when you are fasting, you're giving your body a specific period of rest. Like, that's one of the biggest things about intermittent fasting is the rest-based period. Now, it can be overdone. People are certainly overdoing it. They, without a doubt, are. I don't want to get into Elon Musk in the news with his intermittent fasting, but people are like, hey, you should try it and only eat 800 calories a day every day. And like, again, it just goes too far, because then what happens is you get in such a catabolic based condition, but most people don't realize that when they're in their 20s or even early 30s preaching this. And I get it. I understand it. I was there once as well. But certainly as you get older, what happens is your body can't keep up. It can't regenerate the same way if you're not getting those micronutrients. And that's a problem, right? So you have to make sure that your micros, your vitamins, your minerals, your omegas, amino acids, etc., and not just your macros, right? You need to make sure that you're actually not losing your body's ability to regenerate, and it does matter, right? So in the short term, there's a lot of big benefits, and then of course in the long term, huge benefits with intermittent fasting. Namely overall health from the big 4 reasons why people die, all-cause mortality, which then of course leads to more longevity, right? You just give yourself a much longer chance to live. But with a lot of these studies, they're also being funded in research because of weight loss. So I'm not saying that your goal is to lose weight, but there's a lot of people out there who do struggle with weight. In the United States, we have now 70+% people considered overweight, and that's actually moving more towards obesity. So overweight and obesity are 2 separate categories. Obesity is now being considered more of a medical-based disease and being treated as such. But it's important to look at that, because I know there's a lot of health practitioners listening to this podcast, and we just want to be able to help our patients or wellness clients in the best ability that we have. And of course, and I think namely that has to be nutrition, right? I mean, that has to come first. Certainly, I'm a huge proponent of exercise and movement and toxicity and all these other things to look at, and even hormones, but we do have to start with nutrition. So this is a study that I read about on just a couple Fridays ago on a Friday review, but I think it's worthy of its own podcast, and that's because I think it's the easiest place to start for most people with intermittent fasting. And so I'm going to read it to you, simplify it, and then hopefully we can work through the material and we can give this for everybody, right? For you listening, or if you're a practitioner, for your patients or client. Okay, so this was done, researchers at Queen Mary University in London, England, published in PLOS 1, PLOS 1, sorry, just having a little fun there with the journal-based name. And it was participants with obesity who participated in a weight loss program. Now, this was a long-term study, which is why I like to look at this one. And basically, here it was. So they participated in a weight loss program and were given instructions for either a traditional weight management diet and exercise, or the 5-2 diet, which involves 2 non-consecutive days a week of calorie restriction and 5 days of sensible eating. Both groups lost about the same amount of weight. So let me just take a step back. There's a group that was given a essentially calorie restricted diet of, let's say, like 1,200 to 1,600 calories a day, every single day. And they were to get in exercise most days of the week. Okay, so that was one group. And then the other group was no particular exercise or movement, but they had to follow a sensible diet. Again, that's pretty subjective, right? But then on 2 days of the week, they had to fast. And I'll get into what that is in a moment, because it's not that they couldn't eat, they just had to eat a smaller amount, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So both groups lost about the same amount of weight. So 15% of the participants in the standard group, so that was the lower calorie and exercise, 50% of the participants in the standard group and 18% in the 5-2 group lost at least 5% of their body weight in a year. Okay, so not great statistics in my opinion. I mean, literally, if you're working with most practitioners, 90%. Like literally, if you stick with the program, 90+% of people are going to lose weight. But again, these people were left to their own devices, not necessarily working with a coach or a practitioner, and they were just following a program. So I get it. But they lost at least 5% of their weight. Okay. So if they weighed, let's say 300 pounds, then they lost 15 pounds, right? No, how much would that be? It would be 30 is 10%, 45 pounds. Okay. So they lost 45 pounds if they weighed 300 pounds, right? No, it's 5%. My apologies. Okay. So if you weighed 300 pounds, 10% of that is 30. So 15 pounds would be your weight loss. So I think that's what I said originally, but that's not that great, right? I mean, honestly, not that great, but it is on their own for general population. And the reason why I'm saying not that great, sure, it's not bad. I have no problem with that. And I always, I always cheer on anyone doing anything. Like people say like, hey, can you believe that, people are still doing, curves, gym-based workouts? I'm like, listen, like that might be their starting point. Like, look where you are. How long have you been doing this? Let these people get started, and then maybe they progress up to more functional-based training, or I don't know, maybe sprint-based training in the future. That's great, but like we all have to start somewhere, right? Like when I first get started with health, I was at the very bottom being like, hey, like, okay, you're telling me that drinking Crystal Light is not good for me? Why? It's 0 calorie. Like, what's wrong with it? Oh, there's artificial colors and artificial sweeteners. Oh, I didn't know that, a million years ago when I got started. So we just have to understand, like, I don't think we should ever shame or anything like that. Like, this is someone's starting point. It's different than your, point 10 years in. But anyway, I digress. Let me say this. Most people will be able to lose 5% of their body weight, like if they are on a particular program, within probably a good 12 weeks. So I don't want this to discourage you. That's part of the reason that I'm going into it. But again, that's not the reason for this whole study. This is the reason for it. Those in the 5-2 diet said they were the most likely to recommend the approach and were most willing to continue the diet after it ended. Okay. That is the most important part. Here's why. We have a lot of people dabbling with carnivore, a lot of people dabbling with keto, people dabbling with super low carb, or they're going with really high intensity workouts, or I know CrossFit's kind of changing, but like the previous CrossFit. And the problem was there was a timeline for how long people are actually going to be able to stick with that. The majority of people, yes, some people can stick with something forever. There's no doubt about it. But again, we have 70% of Americans overweight now, and the majority moving towards obesity. So what do? We need something that works, something that's realistic for most people. And that is why I'm bringing up today's show. The 5-2 diet seems to be realistic for most people. Before it was called the 5-2 diet, colleagues of mine, I've chatted about it, mentioned his name before, Brad Pilon, out of Toronto. And he wrote, anyway, I'm not going to go too deep in it, but basically for him, it was 2 days a week of fasting. But the interesting thing is that the 5-2 diet allows people to eat every day of the week, not necessarily fast through a day. It just has to be 500 calories for women, 600 calories for men, no more. Now, this can basically be any really type of foods that you want, but they do say, listen, no alcohol, no detrimental foods. So you could have some soup if you wanted to. You could make a smoothie. You could do a salad with some protein. You still want to move on those days. You want to do normal movement. Again, I recommend 7,000 to 10,000 plus steps per day. But that's it. Like, that's it. That's why it's not difficult. So for those days, okay, people might forego breakfast and then they're having lunch and dinner. And their lunch and dinner might be smaller meals. But for me, the way that we do it in our community, I don't fast 2 days a week. My goal is not weight loss, but fasting 2 days a week is not. It can be good for your overall health, especially if you're more of an anabolic body type. You gain more weight than you lose weight more easily. And so you want to look at it this way. You've heard my show probably before, the 1 day reset diet. Literally, you can do. Again, you can do this however you want. I'm just sharing with you how we do it in my community. So 1 scoop of DNS for breakfast, 1 at lunch, 1 mid-afternoon. And so what you're getting is 20 ounces, though, with each one, because you have to stay hydrated. So that's a big part of why I do that. And it also gives your body the micronutrients that I'm a big proponent of, because it keeps your immune system boosted, et cetera. And then total for the day, it's like 150 calories until you get to dinner. But then at dinner, you actually get to have a 400 or 500 calorie meal. So, for example, what I do on Mondays is this. Okay, I eat Sunday night, and then I'll do my 1 scoops throughout the day, or nothing. I can just do water throughout the day and then have dinner that night, and I can have a 500, 600 calorie dinner. And if you're like, well, that doesn't sound like that many calories, it really is. You can have 2 or 3 huge cups of vegetables, and it's like 50 calories. Okay, so that's that. You add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Okay, that's where the calories start to add up. So just remember, that's 240 calories right there. So maybe like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that much. Maybe I should do 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Okay, so now you're down to 120, and you've got your like 50 calories total there for your vegetables. And that's 3 cups plus some olive oil. Add a little sea salt for a little flavor. Great. So that's like 170 calories. Now you still have another, 300 to 400 calories to go in terms of protein. Great. What could your protein be? Okay, well, let's say you eat 40 grams of your favorite type of protein, and we go 40 times 4. It's only 160 calories. So now we're like, oh, well, we still have a lot more to go. So you can actually eat like 2 handfuls of protein, 3 cups of vegetables, a tablespoon or 2 of olive oil, little sea salt, make it into a nice, delicious meal. You've got plenty of calories right there. For those people who lose weight more easily, all right, half a cup of your favorite starch. So again, you can do this. It's what I do on Mondays. It's super easy. Now, if you're someone looking to lose more weight, or there's a health-based issue, you can do the same exact thing right there. that's the 5-2 diet. I go much more in depth on previous podcasts, but you could do that on a non-consecutive day. My highest recommendation for people are Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays, people are just so busy. It's pretty easy just to fast throughout the day, or do my 1 day reset diet. And Thursdays gives you 2 days in between. Now, some people like to do Saturdays. Some people like to do Wednesdays. Totally up to you. Now, I do have a podcast. I'm not going to remember the name of it off the top of my head, but I want to make sure that you know not to fast the day after drinking alcohol and other things. So I have like when never to fast. So let me link that up as well. That'll be at stephencabral.com/2413. So if you're a practitioner, just remember that instead of radically changing how your clients are eating, you can give them a fairly sensible, easy to follow nutrition plan. But 2 days a week, we're going to call them down calorie days or down days, or however you want to look at it. So up and down, right? So up is normal calories, and then just 2 lower calorie days. I personally like the 1 day reset style. And the reason is that if you drink a 20-ounce shake at breakfast, okay, basically no calories, right? It's 50 calories. So like if you're concerned about calories, and that's basically all coming from protein. Okay, so we get that, and then we've got our lunch one, another 20 ounces, and then we've got our mid-afternoon. You drink 60 ounces of fluid. We divide that by 8. It's almost 8 glasses of water right there for the day, but it has all the electrolytes in it. That's why I like to do it that way. And it's really not going to dip you out of autophagy. A lot of people are worried about, oh, well, I won't get the benefits of autophagy. You will. I mean, you really will. Because when you're looking at that, there's not going to be any spike in blood sugar from using something like the daily nutritional support. The protein, yes, could that be used for fuel for the body? Absolutely. But you're looking at like 7 grams, right? 7.5 grams. So once it's done, it's done. And the overall benefits are there. I mean, they really are. And the reason is if you don't do that, you just have to make sure though that you are staying hydrated, because then you get the lows in your blood pressure and the lows in, not necessarily from dehydration, but you just get the lows in your mood. I've got the warning signs. Let me get you this one too, because this is important. So it's the early warning signs of everyday dehydration. That was episode 2400. We'll link that up here today as well. But I'm telling you right now, like if you're looking for an easy place to start, this seems to me like without radically changing your diet, you just have 2 down days where you're either doing the 1-day reset diet, or you're doing 2 small meals at breakfast and dinner, or you're doing 1 meal a day on those days. Like however you want to do it. It's a good place to start. You might not need to end there, but I'm recommending it right now. It seems to be the simplest one. I know the author of that, originally or now has said, excuse me, has said you can take it up to 800 calories. I don't think so. You want to keep the calories low in those days. You want to get the real benefits of the autophagy and the surge in what you're going to get in fat burning as well. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. If it was helpful, always do feel free to share the show with anyone you believe it could serve. Take care, and I'll talk with you tomorrow.